What I want to put before you today are the principles for which we stand in the post-war world. And for that purpose, I should therefore begin with the war. Now, in the war, I and my principal friends, some 800 of us in all, were imprisoned. We were put in jail without charge or trial of any kind, as was afterwards explained, to prevent us from persuading the British people to make peace. We were dead against that war for reasons I will give. And we exercised the right which many great Englishmen have exercised in the past of declaring our opposition to a war we believed to be unnecessary and a danger to our country. We were against that war for two broad reasons. The first was that the war would endanger the British Empire, might cause its breakup or loss, and the second, that it would create the power of Russian communism in the world, which could be a menace to us and to the whole of Europe. We looked upon it as a brothers' war which divided Europe for the benefit of communism. I think there are very few people today who will deny either that the British Empire has suffered great losses through that war, or that communism has achieved enormous gains. We have lost most of what we possessed, and communism has gained what it never could have gained except through the division of Europe. And therefore I claim today, when we stood against an unnecessary war, as Lord Chatham stood against the war about America, against the American colonies, as Charles James Fox stood against the war which was waged against the French Revolution, as Lloyd George stood against the Boer War, and as many labor leaders stood against the First World War, when we exercised the same British right of free speech on this occasion, we have been proved right by what has since occurred. And when our ex-servicemen of the First World War, because we all were ex-servicemen of the First World War, went round Brixton Prison wearing the medals they had gained in that war, they were in fact performing for Britain an even greater service in the Second War than they did in the First. And now we're back as a result of that war, a small island in the northern mists, without the manpower apparently even to man our own mines or our own agriculture, certainly without the manpower to develop single-handed an empire which we'd neglected for generations despite our appeals for its development, and we have given away all the resources of accumulated wealth with which it could have been developed. And therefore, it is out of the question to pursue the old imperial policy of saving ourselves by developing British Empire in a very short space of time which will be permitted to us before the world crash and the disaster of Great Britain. Therefore, we believe that time is pressing, and without delay we should enter into the Union of Europe. And we've been saying that not in the last few weeks, but ever since the war, and it is on public record. We believe in the policy of Europe a nation. We believe the only practical policy is that the European peoples should unite so completely as the peoples of England, Scotland, and Wales united within the British Isles, or the peoples of the German states united within Germany. We believe, in fact, that Europe should be made a complete and integral nation, that we should no longer think of ourselves only as Englishmen, as Frenchmen, or as Germans, but we should think of ourselves as Europeans. That does not mean, of course, that we lose our pride in being Englishmen, any more than it means we lose our pride in being English within the British Isles. The Englishman is proud of being English, the Scotsman of being Scot, and the Welshman of being Welsh. All our local patriotism and feeling is still surviving and flourishing within the British Isles. And so it will flourish within the new Union of Europe. We shall be as proud of being Britons within Europe as we are today proud of being Englishmen within the British Empire. And so it will go on. We lose nothing and abandon nothing of any of our great institutions, whether it be the Crown or our language or our culture. All of our great English institutions will be preserved within this great political and economic union, which will bring to our people the salvation of a new life and a greater prosperity. Now, I believe it necessary to have such a complete union because no lesser measures will possibly work, and I believe that's now being proved. Very reluctantly, 10 years too late, our government begins to talk about entering into a free trade area, linked on to the common market which the other European powers have already formed, which we should have led, but which in fact we've obstructed. Now, I do not believe that either free trade area, common market, or anything else will work without common government, and I'll give you the reasons. You must have a common government with the power to give economic leadership unless that common market is going to lead to a disaster for our industries. It's perfectly true that in different parts of Europe you have different conditions, different level of wages, different length of hours worked, different social systems, welfare states, and the rest of it. And if you suddenly expose our industries without any other measure to the competition of people working longer hours and for lower wages, of course you dislocate our industries by European competition just as much as they are now threatened with dislocation on world markets by world competition. But within Europe, if you have a European government, you will have the power to level up the conditions which are different to our own. You can, for instance, see that within comparable trades the same wages are paid throughout Europe by joint action between European government and European trade unionism. The same in the matter of hours, the same in the matter of social systems. You can in fact secure that throughout this area of Europe, under your own control of your own elected government, you can ensure that in comparable industries you have got the same level of wages and hours, and therefore fair and not unfair competition. And of this I am sure, that the English designer and technician, the English craftsman and workman, can hold his own in any field in the world where the competition is fair. What you cannot do, and what no man can do, is to meet competition which is unfair, which I define in this way. A man is supplied with the same machines as you work, but works for lower wages and works for longer hours. And that is the condition which Britain is beginning to face on every market of the world. You are not facing them yet because you've been held up by the artificial boom which follows every war, by the armament boom, and by American charity on a vast scale. But at long last we're beginning to face the true conditions, and that means a competition on world markets from industries which have the same machines supplied by Western finance to undercut us, but work for longer hours and for lower wages. And will anyone tell me how under those conditions you can compete against an Indian or a Chinaman or a Japanese, paid a fraction of your wages, but working exactly the same machines as you work? And when you come up against the real conditions in the post-war world, this immense competition which is now awaiting us, you will find that against unfair competition, British industry is powerless. And of course, in addition to that, you're going to have on all these markets, directly with any form of world oppression, the dumped surpluses of great self-contained economies like America, and the deliberately dumped surplus of Russia, which will put cheap goods on the markets of the world at prices we cannot touch, with the deliberate intent of undercutting our industries and causing the collapse of the capitalist system. All these things are facing us in the very near future, and Britain is today more exposed to that attack than any other country in the world, because by reason of our past development, we are more dependent than any other country on world markets. Dependent because we have to send abroad an enormous proportion of our total production to sell in open competition on world markets in order to produce the goods to pay for the vital imports which we cannot produce within these small islands. And the moment that we cease to be able to sell those goods abroad under this system, we will also cease to be able to pay for our vital imports, and you will be faced with a disastrous situation in this country.